Hello and welcome to Did You Know Gaming Extra. In this episode, we'll be doing something a little bit different. Instead of talking about facts that all relate to a theme, we're going to tell you some of our favourite facts from both popular and lesser known GameCube games. We're willing to bet that you're watching this video because, like us, you loved the GameCube and its exclusive lineup of games. What's interesting about some of the GameCube's most recognisable titles is that they were originally planned to release on the Nintendo 64. One GameCube game that was planned to release on the N64 was Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem. The game was announced at E3 in 1999 and was even demoed at the convention. Booths demonstrating the game on N64 hardware were situated around the convention hall, meaning a good portion of the title had already been developed at the time of the announcement. As the GameCube was released during the title's creation, and a number of changes were made to the game, it was decided to transfer what had been developed to the GameCube with a number of improvements. Another example is Rare's Star Fox Adventures, which started its life as an N64 game called Dinosaur Planet, and had nothing to do with the Star Fox series at all. After Nintendo veteran Shigeru Miyamoto noticed similarities between Dinosaur Planet and Star Fox, the decision was made to make the game part of Star Fox. Additionally, according to UK official Nintendo magazine, Tricky was originally planned to be Tricky the Triceratops, one of the bosses from the N64 racing game Diddy Kong Racing. After transitioning to the GameCube and the Star Fox universe, it was decided that they should become an original character instead. Resident Evil 0 was also planned to appear on the N64 and during this time. It was even planned for the Resident Evil prequel to have multiple endings based on which character survived the events of the game. Unlike the final game, this means that there would have been points in the game in which either of the protagonists, Rebecca or Billy, could have been killed. Unlike the other two games mentioned, these changes weren't made because of the transition to the new console, but instead because of continuity issues. If Rebecca had died in the prequel, she wouldn't have been alive during the story of Resident Evil 1. Speaking of alternate finales, another alternate ending which actually made its way into the game's final release appeared in Custom Robo for the GameCube. Towards the end of the game, the player is asked whether they want to accompany their team to the Z Syndicate hideout. If they select the response, "I'm not going," 20 times, Harry will stop his pleading and the team will depart without them. An alternate ending is then shown where the human race is wiped out at the hands of the game's villain, and Harry chastises the player for letting him and his comrades die because of the player's decision to select the wrong dialogue choice. Some games on the GameCube had differences in their releases for various regions of the world. With the compilation disc The Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition, the Canadian release featured different box art. While the US release featured screenshots of each game included in the compilation, Canada was shown each of the game's logos instead. In Japan, the game also came in a 2-disc case, but internationally it was shipped with a standard single-disc case. Many believe that this change was due to the Japanese version's increased instruction manual size. On top of this, the music which plays during the game's selection menu differs between regions too. Japan's game has an original remix of the main Legend of Zelda theme, and the international game has the song from the Master Quest menu instead. Another game with international differences is Mario Party 6. In Japan, the vegetable pulled out of the ground in the minigame Garden Grab is a turnip, while elsewhere in the world it's a carrot. In Europe and Australia, the 4 minigames based on luck, Same is Lame, Trap Ease Artist, Pitfall, and Trick or Tree aren't included in the Endurance Alley mode. This is because the games bring a possibility of unavoidably breaking a win streak based entirely on luck. Another change comes with the European and Australian games' battle spaces, which instead of featuring an uppercase B, display a lightning bolt similar to the battle spaces in Mario Party 2. PAL versions of the game also extended the playtime for the minigame Fruit Talk Tale from 60 seconds to 72 seconds. Another piece of trivia about a Mario minigame comes from Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Despite how it may appear, the Happy Lucky Lottery has nothing to do with luck at all. The chances of winning are actually determined by when the player bought the ticket based on the internal clock of the GameCube. The date of the player's purchase of a ticket is saved into memory, and that ticket will win depending on the number of days that have passed from the day of purchase. The player may receive 4th place if they check the board between 4 to 10 days later, 3rd place between 25 and 35 days, 2nd between 85 and 115 days, and 1st place between 335 and 395 days later. It's possible, however, to cheat the system by adjusting the console's calendar. By shifting the clock forward, it can greatly increase increase the odds of winning by selecting a day between the given time frames. However, by pushing the clock back to a date earlier than when the ticket was purchased, Lucky Lottery host Lucky will ask the player whether they had changed the console's clock. Telling the host that they haven't will keep the pressure on to speak the truth, which if they do will see the character fly into a fit of rage and demand that the player pay 500 coins in order to reset the lottery and allow it to be played again. To add to this, buying a replacement ticket will simply reset the purchase date to when the new ticket was obtained, meaning that by playing legitimately, the player will have to wait even longer before the chance of winning each respective prize. This is a really complicated system, and for more information on exactly how the game calculates the player's chances, you should take a look at Strider's comprehensive video in the description down below. Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, the remake of the legendary PlayStation game, features all new gameplay and cutscenes. One of these cutscenes, however, caused some issues with the overall continuity of the series. When Snake is first introduced to Revolver Ocelot, the character is portrayed as right-handed, demonstrated by a display of flair. After Grey Fox cuts his arm off, he attempts to do this again with his left hand, leading to him fumbling and dropping his gun. Although later in the game he manages to shoot the PAL key from Snake's hand without hitting Snake or damaging the key. In the prequel, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, Ocelot is shown to be ambidextrous, displaying equal skill with both his left and right hands. He also uses his gun left-handed throughout Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. While it's possible that he could have trained his left hand by the events of MGS2, MGS3 is set decades before the events of Twin Snakes. Though likely just an oversight by developers Silicon Knights, this continuity error could have come about as Twin Snakes and Snake Eater were in production simultaneously, with both releasing just months apart in 2004. One character who went from using a gun to nothing at all is Vanessa from PN03. It was originally intended for the character to use a gun during gameplay to dispatch adversaries, but due to scheduling conflicts, the developers weren't able to complete the gun animations in time. Because of this, the team opted for the character to shoot energy blasts from her hands instead. Some characters may be defined by time constraints, but others are defined by more outlandish ideas, such as references to other games. In Sonic Team's title Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, the 4 playable characters in the game's multiplayer and story modes are actually based on 4 of the main cast members from the Sonic the Hedgehog series. Billy Hatcher is based on Sonic the Hedgehog, Chick Poacher is Tails, Bantam Scrambled is Knuckles, and Roly Roll is based on Amy. Each of these characters uses similar colours to the characters in Sonic, as well as striking similar poses as well. As an example shown with the game's box art, Billy can be seen taking the same stance as Sonic in the artwork for Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Team might reference their previous creations in character designs, but Nintendo enjoyed adding a small Easter egg to 1080 Avalanche which referenced their full-blown retro past. A special snowboard can be unlocked called the Old School Board, which takes the appearance of a classic NES controller. While using the board, the sound effects for bumping into objects and jumping are changed to the sounds used for a small Mario in the original Super Mario Bros. There's actually also a hidden cheat relating to this board. By pausing the game and pressing up, down, left, right, and then B, and then unpausing the game, the screen will become pixelated. Why you'd want to play the game like that, I don't know, this is a horrible mess. Other references to Mario in the game include an ice sculpture of the Nintendo hero towards the end of the Angel Light Midnight City course, and a Mario sprite from Super Mario All-Stars can be found on the bottom of Ricky Winterborn's 8-bit Soul snowboard. The alternate version of this board will replace Mario with Luigi instead. The game was also originally intended to have a different subtitle. Rather than being 1080 Avalanche, the game would have been called 1080 White Storm, similar to Wave Race Blue Storm as shown in an unused placeholder title screen found in the game's data. Wave Race Blue Storm actually has an Easter egg that wasn't discovered for 9 years. In the game's audio settings, changing the waveform display to that of vertically rising fog, then pressing up, down, left, right, and then AXZ, and then finally selecting the character Hayota Hayami on any race, will change the game's narrator to a rather unfriendly voice.
You have chosen poorly.
And the game's turbo sound effect into a little girl making a meowing noise. And now it's time for this episode's random piece of trivia. Today we're talking about a fan favourite among RPG lovers, and personally one of my favourite games of all time. It's Final Fantasy VII. During production, the game's producer, Tetsuya Nomura, had originally planned for there to only be 3 playable characters throughout the entire game. This all changed because of a phone call between Nomura and director Yoshinori Kitase, where they decided that one of these 3 characters should be killed off permanently. The team decided on the character being Aerith, and as a result, Nomura created Tifa to provide another possible love interest for Cloud. For more Nintendo trivia, check out our video on anti-piracy measures in video games, where we talk about Pokemon and more. We're also creating a region-locked book about games which had restricted regional releases. If you'd like to help us make this book, look into how you can pre-order and fund its creation in the description down below. And then I'll do the end slate later.